Cracking down on the North amid a lull in their nuclear talks, the US sanctions 3 top North Korean officials in response to their role in the regime's human rights abuses and censorship. Samsung's troubled biotech arm is out of the woods despite its accounting fraud. Samsung BioLogics avoids the worst-case scenario and will not be delisted from South Korea's main bourse. Plus, dramatic scenes in the UK. British Prime Minister Theresa May delays a House of Commons vote on her Brexit deal, admitting it would have been rejected. Our top story this morning. The US government is slamming more North Korean officials with sanctions. The punitive measures are in response to their alleged human rights abuses and censorship efforts. Our Jae-in starts us off.
The U.S. Treasury Department has sanctioned 3 North Korean officials, including a top aide to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, citing ongoing and serious human rights abuses and censorship. The U.S. Treasury identified him as Choi Ryong-hae, an aide long regarded as a right-hand man to Kim Jong-un, who also heads the Workers' Party of Korean Organization and Guidance Department. State Security Minister Chung Kyung-taek and the director of North Korea's Propaganda and Agitation Department, Park Kwang-ho. U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said the North Korean officials direct departments that perpetrate the regime's brutal state-sponsored censorship activities, human rights violations, and abuses to suppress and control the population. Mnuchin added the latest sanctions demonstrate the United States' ongoing support for freedom of expression and opposition to endemic censorship and human rights abuses. Observers say while it's still unclear, the decision to sanction the officials may be related to the recent stall in the Pyongyang-Washington nuclear talks, which have made little progress since Kim Jong-un and President Trump met in Singapore in June. The Treasury Department said these sanctions shine a spotlight on the North's treatment of people inside the regime, as it will serve as a reminder of North Korea's brutal treatment of U.S. citizen Otto Warmbier. The American student died in mid-2017 after 17 months of detention in North Korea. These sanctions freeze any assets the officials may have under U.S. jurisdiction and generally prohibits them from engaging in any transactions with anyone in the United States. It now begs the question, how will these sanctions impact the nuclear diplomacy between the two sides? 이승재, Arirang News.
Now, the operator of South Korea's stock markets decided on Monday to allow traders to resume buying and selling shares of Samsung BioLogics. And that's exactly what investors started doing about an hour ago. For more, we connect to our business correspondent Kim Hae-sung, who joins us on the line. Hae-sung, just start by telling us more about this ruling on Monday.
Right, Mark. So the Korea Exchange said yesterday that Samsung BioLogics is qualified to continue trading on the benchmark Kospi. The ruling comes after the bio arm of Samsung Group had been suspended since November 14th after the Financial Services Commission said the company deliberately overstated the value of its affiliate Samsung Bioepis ahead of its IPO in 2016, which raised about $2 billion. The Korea Exchange's Corporate Review Committee concluded yesterday that there are some concerns about management transparency, but said it took into account Samsung BioLogics' business outlook, revenues, and profitability to keep it listed on the Kospi, and another reason to protect the interest of investors. The ruling comes earlier than expected as the deadline for the decision on whether or not to allow trading had been set for December 31st. But then keep in mind that although it's back on Kospi, the legal battle with Korea's financial watchdog is still ongoing. The FSC accused Samsung BioLogics of accounting fraud, and Samsung BioLogics denied any wrongdoing and has filed an administrative lawsuit against that.
So, Hae-sung, we now know that Samsung BioLogics resumed trading. It happened around 60 minutes ago. So the question on everyone's lips is, how is it looking?
Well, shares of Samsung BioLogics soared 20% compared to the session before it was suspended, trading at about $360 per share as of 10 a.m. This comes as market uncertainties have been removed. I mean, again, in the worst case scenario, Samsung BioLogics could have been removed from the stock market or be given a probation period before it's allowed back to the trading floor. As for Samsung BioLogics, it welcomed the ruling and in a statement said it would strengthen its internal control system and plan to prove the legitimacy of its accounting methods. And given it's the 8th biggest firm in market cap on the Kospi with a market cap of $19.5 billion, it also helps lift Korea's biosector shares and the Kospi. But then again, the legal battle with the financial authorities remain a risk factor and we'll have to watch that. So that's all I have for now. Back to you, Mark.
Well, thank you, Hye-sung, for that report. Fine reporting as always. And yes, very good news for investors in South Korea's Kospi in general, because Samsung BioLogics is a big player, as we heard, they're 8th biggest in market cap. Now, in other news, South Korea is now officially in the era of the self-driving car. A new test bed for driverless technology opened on Monday. It's called K-City. The country's prime minister was there to celebrate its opening and to encourage Korea's automakers to get involved. Cha Sang-mi reports.
It reads, opening the future for cars. A new testbed for driverless technology, K-City, opened on Monday for automakers and researchers to come and test their latest innovations. K-City is a 350 square kilometer urban center built in Hwasong, Gyeonggi-do province with almost all imaginable scenarios and road environments for self-driving vehicles. It has all different kinds of lanes, freeways, and autonomous parking lots. The opening ceremony was attended by Prime Minister Lee Na-kyun, who gave some words of encouragement to officials from the Transport Ministry and to automakers working on future cars.
Our auto industry is now at a turning point. We expect Korean companies, including automakers, to discern where the market and their competitors are going, to look toward and promptly prepare for the future.
He also said the government is doing its best not only to cut regulations, but to allocate more of its budget, nearly $900 million to the sector for the coming year. South Korea entered the auto industry much later than countries like the United States. It started out making cars out of parts from American Jeeps, but now it's one of the world's top 5 automakers. Pointing to that example, Prime Minister Lee expressed confidence that Korea's autonomous cars will meet with similar success. He said the focus, though, will still be on the safety of the Korean people.
What's more important than technological skills is safety, whose importance we've been feeling lately. I hope South Korea's future cars will be the safest in the world.
Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
South Korea's Presidential Committee on the Fourth Industrial Revolution has identified 2 key areas where the country can harness the Fourth Industrial Revolution to grow its economy. Those are healthcare and the robotics industry. Our So Eun-kyung has the details.
Healthcare and robotics will be the 2 main growth drivers of the Korean economy. This is according to a presidential committee founded to find economic growth opportunities in preparation for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. The committee said that Korea will lead the healthcare industry by utilizing Fourth Industrial Revolution technologies such as big data and artificial intelligence. The global healthcare AI market will see annual growth of 52.7% from 2016 to 2022, according to market research company Frost & Sullivan. With the vision of creating a society where everyone is healthy, the committee has set up the goals of extending the healthy lifespan from 73 years old in 2015 to 76 years old in 2022, and increasing the number of jobs in the healthcare sector from 130,000 in 2016 to 180,000 in 2022. In addition, the committee plans to make a standardized big data management system for the health industry. To do so, it will recruit 300 ordinary citizens and cancer survivors and conduct analysis on the genetic and medical history of participants. The findings will be utilized to generate advanced knowledge of collecting and making use of patients' data. Artificial intelligence will be used to help develop new drugs more economically and a shorter period of time. The Presidential Committee also sees the robotics industry as a potential growth engine. Although Korea's robot technology is fourth in the world following Japan, the US, and Europe, Korean companies haven't fully commercialized the technology. the committee will come up with ways to support robotics in a range of fields from medicine and logistics to national defense. So the robots can be used in people's daily lives, they'll be provided to the elderly and the disabled first. By the end of this year, 1,000 robots will be provided to help them with their mobility and be a companion to talk to. The Presidential Committee on the Fourth Industrial Revolution was founded last year and on Monday had its first official meeting after a reshuffle of members. 서은경, Arirang News.
The state-run Korea Development Institute says the South Korean economy is showing signs of a gradual slowdown, mainly due to low domestic demand and slower export growth. Go Ryun-hee with the details.
The Korean economy appears to be gradually slowing down, according to the Korea Development Institute on Monday. The state-run think tank said in its monthly report that domestic demand remained weak due to sluggish investment. Facilities investment in October went up by more than 9% on year, which marks a big jump from the previous month marked by a decline of nearly 20%. However, the institute stressed that there were fewer working days in September due to the major national holiday of Chuseok falling in that month, which was celebrated over the span of 5 days, including 3 weekdays. The overall situation remains grim as a series of leading indicators related to facilities investment remain stagnant. For instance, orders for special industrial machineries decreased in October. A researcher at the KDI says lower investment in the semiconductor sector is one of the main reasons for the downward trend.
The growth rate of facilities investments was high last year because the semiconductor boom led to an increase in investment in related industries. This year, however, the growth rate is low because facilities investment was already complete.
Slowdown in consumption also contributed to low domestic demand. Retail sales went up by 5% in October. However, the KDI pointed out that average figures during September and October were lower than August, meaning that the overall situation isn't looking great. Another culprit for the local economy slowdown was observed in exports. Exports in November merely increased by 4.5%, which is significantly lower than the previous month growth rate of almost 23%. The drop in exports was mainly observed in semiconductors and petrochemical products. Meanwhile, October's overall industry production grew by almost 7% on year, thanks to increased production in the mining, manufacturing, and services industries. 고륜이, Arirang News.
Now we start with the big news out of the United Kingdom. British Prime Minister Theresa May has called off Tuesday's crunch vote on her Brexit deal, admitting that it would have been voted down by MPs in the House of Commons. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our No Aram. So Aram, the Brexit process is once again thrown into chaos.
That's right, Mark. Prime Minister May says she will go back to Brussels to seek changes to the divorce agreements. This is what many MPs wanted in the first place, but Mrs May tried to push for the vote on Tuesday as scheduled. However, she did admit the deal would be rejected by what she called a significant margin. Now, the key sticking point is the so-called backstop, which is a provision that would prevent a hard Irish border after the UK leaves the EU. That measure would keep Britain under EU customs rules until new trade agreements are reached. However, critics suggest it could keep the UK tied to the bloc indefinitely, unable to strike new trade deals around the world. May continued to defend the plan, but says she would seek reassurances from her EU counterparts.
I believe in it, as do many members of this House, and I still believe there is a majority to be won in this House in support of it, if I can secure additional reassurance on the question of the backstop. And that is what my focus will be in the days ahead.
Mrs May also suggested there was broad support for her deal reached with the EU last month, a claim that was laughed at by some MPs. EU leaders signalled they are prepared to help Britain, but up to a point, but insisted the Brexit agreement would not be renegotiated. MPs reacted angrily to May's announcement to postpone Tuesday's vote. The opposition leader, Jeremy Corbyn, urged the Prime Minister to step down, saying her government has, quote, lost control of events. Other parties also suggested holding a vote of no confidence. French President Emmanuel Macron has bowed to pressure from the so-called Yellow Vest movement, announcing a slew of measures aimed at diffusing weeks of violent protests. In a televised address to the nation on Monday, Macron promised a rise in the minimum wage and also tax concessions.
A worker on the minimum wage will see his pay increase by 100 euros a month as soon as 2019, without extra costs to the employer. Overtime will be paid free of taxes starting in 2019. And I want for a real improvement to be perceptible straight away. This is why I will ask all the employers who can afford it to pay their employees an end-of-the-year bonus. This bonus will come tax-free.
However, Macron said he would not reinstate a tax on the wealthy, suggesting it would weaken the nation. He was mostly apologetic in his speech, though he did condemn the violence that has left most of Paris in ruins. A Chinese court has banned the sale and import of most Apple iPhones amid a patent spat with the microchip company Qualcomm. The court granted 2 injunctions against Apple subsidiaries in China, ordering the firm to stop sales of the iPhone 6s through to the iPhone 10. The ruling does not affect the latest 10s and 10R models, as they were not yet available when Qualcomm filed its lawsuit late last year. Now, Qualcomm filed the suit, saying Apple owes it money for using its technology. Apple played down the ruling, saying it only applied to phones that were running older versions of its software, and that as a result, all of its iPhone models would remain on sale. The firm also said it would appeal the ruling.
Thank you as always to our Noah Ram for the world news. Now, South Korea and the United States are holding another round of talks in Seoul on sharing the costs of stationing American troops here on the Korean Peninsula. Taking place over the next 3 days, this is the 10th round of negotiations between the allies, and they are trying to reach a final deal before the current accord expires at the end of the month. At issue is how much each side will have to pay for some 28,500 US troops based here in South Korea. Last week, the Wall Street Journal reported President Trump wants Seoul to pay as much as double the current amount. As it stands, South Korea contributed around $850 million in 2018 to have US troops on its soil. Now, we're going to take a closer look at South Korea's budget for 2019. And the Unification Ministry has released the details of its spending for next year to keep improving ties with North Korea. Its budget for inter-Korean cooperation has been raised quite significantly by 15%, which puts it over the 1 trillion Korean won mark for the first time since 2016. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Oh Jung-hee with the details.
To maintain peace on the Korean Peninsula and to further improve ties with North Korea, the South Korean government is upping its budget next year for inter-Korean cooperation. On Monday, Seoul's Unification Ministry released its 2019 spending plan. It calls for spending 1.1 trillion won, or almost $1 billion on the ministry's Inter-Korean Cooperation Fund, a rise of 15% from this year. For inter-Korean economic cooperation, South Korea is raising its budget by over 60%. The money will be used to connect and upgrade railways and roads between the two Koreas, as well as to lay the foundation for future economic cooperation. Grants, mostly for companies doing work on the projects, will rise by 25%, up to $274 million. In loans, mostly for the equipment to be provided to the North, by almost 500% to just over $100 million. With grand goals ahead for inter-Korean forestry cooperation, spending in that field will increase by 280%, mainly for disease and pest control work in modernizing the North's tree nurseries. Another big part of Seoul's agenda is resolving humanitarian issues. Seoul is upping its budget to support families separated by the Korean War by 230% so that they can communicate and interact with each other more often and more freely. The money is to be used to restore the meeting facilities and enable video reunions and video letters. With the budget for civic exchanges and medical cooperation set to rise as well, Seoul says it also plans to increase its budget for inter-Korean talks by over 100%. That increase just by the numbers alone shows that South Korea aims to communicate with the North more regularly and systematically to keep their ties stable and, more importantly, sustainable. 오정희, Arirang News.
The shortlist of candidates for Time magazine's 2018 Person of the Year is out, and it includes someone we know extremely well here in South Korea, President Moon Jae-in. The magazine cited President Moon's role in hosting the North Korean leader's sister at the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics here in South Korea back in February, and the 3 historic inter-Korean summits held this year. It added President Moon brokered the landmark summit in Singapore between Kim and President Trump as well. The shortlist also includes President Trump, as you'd imagine, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Prince Harry's wife, the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle. The winner will be announced Tuesday at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, local researchers, together with a team from the United States, have developed a biodegradable electronic medicine made out of silicon that completely dissolves after being implanted in the body. The team says the treatment could be used to help patients with nerve damage. And if you've ever had that, you know how painful that can be. Jo Sung-min reports.
When nerves in the hands and feet get damaged, it can lead to a condition called peripheral neuropathy. In Korea, there are nearly 10,000 new cases of it every year. It causes pain or numbness in your hands and feet because the damage stops signals from your brain and spinal cord from reaching to the rest of your body. Patients can feel a stabbing pain or a tickle even from a light physical contact with others. To treat the condition, researchers at KAIST, a local science university, worked with a team from Northwestern University and developed an electronic medicine that restores nerve function and then dissolves automatically.
The electronic medicine is made out of a special material that starts to dissolve 2 to 4 weeks after being implanted into the body.
Made with ultra-thin flexible silicon, the medicine provides electricity that speeds up nerve regeneration. They are implanted in the arms. Experts say the biodegradable e-medicine is highly efficient in treating other kind of nerve damage too, such as traumatic brain and spinal injuries. Also, it's more cost-effective than other treatments.
I can confidently say that there is absolutely no risk of secondary damage or side effects since the device melts away inside the body.
The new technique was published in the online version of the academic journal Nature Medicine in early November. Jo Sung-min, Arirang News.
Good morning. Wet clouds have been dropping showers on the southern parts of the country. The clouds are gradually moving northwards, and the rest of the country is expected to receive either snow or rain, depending on the region. So parts of Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-pukdo and Chungcheong-pukdo provinces will see 2 to 7 centimeters of snowfall from this afternoon until late at night. And it could snow all day in those affected regions, and heavy snow advisories could be issued, so be careful driving. Seoul will be cloudy, but will have no rain or snow. Daily highs will be similar or a tad higher than yesterday. Seoul getting up to 4 degrees Celsius. Busan and Jeju will top out at 8 and 11 degrees respectively. Morning lows will plunge again tomorrow to below -5 degrees Celsius here in Seoul again, but highs will be above 0. Dress accordingly to avoid catching a cold. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's where we're going to have to leave it for now on this Tuesday morning here in Seoul. Do stay tuned to Arirang TV. And a reminder that we'll have our next newscast coming up at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.
Arirang Radio's Turn Up Party Radio Gaga.
Arirang Radio is having a special broadcast to send off 2018.
Yubin, Hotshot, Dreamcatcher, Into It.
Hosted by Isak and Benji.
December 17th, Monday.